Joining me now is Bryan Jay of Dogbone, once upon a time part of Keel. Bryan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about Dogbone with myself and our audience.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we've talked to Ron Keel a couple of times in the past, and I think in general people remember Keel, but kind of talk a little bit about how this band grows out of that one. I understand you've got a few of your former bandmates from Keel in Dogbone.
Well, yeah, it originally started. I left Kiel in like the end of 89, 1989, and a band I had before I joined Kiel. The singer and I reconnected, and we started writing songs. And we're like, well, let's put a band together here. And eventually, Dwayne from Kiel, the drummer, came in, and we got a bass player from a guy from Canada named Rob Thiessen. And Dogbone was out playing shows. We were just writing songs and doing demos. Our goal was to get a record deal and get out there and start touring and making music. But things didn't work out with the singer after a while, and so we got Rhett Forrester from Riot came in, and we started writing songs. We hit it off right away. He was just what a talent. I mean, his voice just fit perfectly with what I was doing, and we just started writing songs. And by that time, it was like right when the grunge scene was taking off in Nirvana, and so we were trying to get interest and try to get a record deal and do that whole thing, but it just wasn't happening at the time, so it
Yeah, I
just
mean,
kind
it
of fell
seems
apart.
like one of those things where you're putting the band together, maybe even just 1 year, maybe 2 years, a little too late. And I've talked to artists who had things going in '89 and '90, and then
Yeah,
it's that next album, you know,
right.
and it's through no fault of the people who buy music, and no fault for the bands that the record company started focusing on. I talk about this a lot. Like years ago, I asked Mark Slaughter about this, and he's like, "No, I don't hate Alice in Chains. They put out great records. It's just the record companies felt like, well, somebody couldn't possibly have room in their CD collection for Alice in Chains and Slaughter and Tesla and Warrant. And I considered myself somebody that I liked a lot of that stuff, but I still like the old stuff. It was just like, wait, what happened? How is this new Tesla, this Bust a Nut album they put out? How am I supposed to think that this is terrible? Because it's actually really good,
Right.
and yes, Alice in Chains Dirt is also a great album. So
It
it
is. Yeah.
and I guess I think it was Janie Lane told the story before he passed, obviously, that he went to the record company, and where they had a gigantic Warrant album cover hanging, they had an Alice in Chains cover instead. And he was like,
Right.
uh-oh, so it couldn't have been more blatant, and I like to think there's a little bit more diversity now, because I guess we're so far past it. But so, trying to put it together at that moment in time, obviously I can see, Bryan, how you definitely hit a little speed bump. So what
Yeah.
happens at that moment for you personally?
Oh, well, I had gotten married, and I had a daughter, started a family, and really was trying to get a gig for a long time. I started teaching guitar, and I never stopped music. Just taught guitar for a very long time, and that was a real my main source there. And just nothing going on musically. I didn't do any shows for a long time until Keel
Mhm.
got back together. And that was around 2008, 2009. We did a reunion show, and then obviously we went in and did another record and did a lot of shows after that. Went to Europe, I think, 3 times, maybe four. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was tough being a musician at that time, an '80s musician. Unless you were in Bon Jovi or you know somebody like
Yeah, but I
that.
mean, it's interesting to think about because even bands like Def Leppard, they had to kind of take a step back. They kind of had to put things
Yeah,
on pause. Yeah, they're playing arenas and sometimes stadiums now, but where were they playing in 1995? And
right,
what
right.
have they put out that album Slang? And what happened to them at that moment in time? And there was nobody bigger than them. And Bon Jovi, I mean, he really, he took a couple minutes and he did the whole makeover, and he's like, yeah, we kind of do this new thing now. Yeah, I slowed down the old songs. So yeah, it's tough. It was tough. It seems like it was tough for everybody, and it's only in hindsight that you start to think like, oh yeah, where did that band go for a few years? So
Right.
but you talked about how, you started a family, and if you'd been out on the road, that probably would have been a little tougher. So I guess you got to look
Absolutely.
at the trade-off that way.
Yeah,
So get,
I'm not complaining.
oh no, I didn't think you were. Yeah.
Kind of, but not.
Yeah. You're like, on the one hand, this is great.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, I would like to have had both.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So getting Keel back together, obviously that kind of gets things going again. So talk about how this Dogbone song, Speed Kills, which our audio audience will hear some of after you and I are done talking.
Great.
Talk
Appreciate that.
about, of course, yeah. And let's talk about how that song comes about as a Dogbone song. And people can find it on RFK Media's Live the Rock Volume 1 CD.
Absolutely.
And I always try to say Live the Rock, and then I realize it's Live the Rock. But I guess if he puts out, if Ron puts out another album where everybody does these songs live, then it would be Live the Rock Live. So that's
There you
confusing.
go.
So don't do that. But talk a little bit about sort of how doing Dogbone again kind of grows out of what was going on in that moment.
Well, I mean, this new version, really, we did Monsters of Rock Cruise 2020, and
And
Dwayne and I,
just to interject, that's the early part of 2020. So that happened
yes, I
pre-pandemic.
think it was
Yeah.
February, might have been
Yeah.
February, early March, maybe it was February, and Dwayne and I, we were talking because Keel wasn't really doing very many shows, and hey man, let's get a new band, let's get something going here, let's do a side project or get something going. And we just started talking, wait, why not do Dogbone? Because I own a music library, which I do music for film and TV and promos and anything that really needs music. And I'd been working with a singer, Bob Reynolds, and we've been writing a lot of songs for the library. And we would write a song and it would be like, man, this is really good. we should put a band together. So I was like, hey, Dwayne, man, I got this singer, and why don't we reform Dogbone? And it was like, absolutely. So when we left the cruise, it was like that was on our minds. Okay, let's start, moving forward with this. And bam, the pandemic hits. And it was like, okay, well, like everything stopped. So we kind of put it on the side, but I was still writing songs for my music library, and me and Bob continued working together. So actually Speed Kills came out of that. So it was like I had the music all written, and I had the title Speed Kills. Gave it to Bob, and he wrote all the lyrics and put those melodies together, and that's how that song came about. So it wasn't really originally recorded for the first single, but it ended up being that, because we have a brand new single coming out probably the end of January, beginning March, or beginning of February next year. So but Ron had this album coming out, and he was like, hey, you got any songs? I said, yeah, here, Speed Kills. So that's how that song got put on there. It wasn't necessarily recorded to be on that record, but
Right, but that's the thing. If somebody says, "Hey, you got songs?" It's like, "Do I got songs?" Hey,
yeah,
I gotta try to narrow it down, because you have so many. And I think that it's interesting because I've talked to a few musicians who do sort of what you're talking about in terms of, some of it's music licensing, some of it's music production. I know Fred Corey from Cinderella, like his full-time job now is basically scoring TV shows. Like,
yes,
I think Tom Kiefer doesn't want to put Cinderella back together, but one of the obstacles, if he wanted to, is that Fred's very busy,
Yes.
and it's interesting because you kind of think about it sometimes. And, I think sometimes you'll hear a song that's like, oh, that kind of reminds me of something, but I assume that's not really how it works. Is it just one of those things? Hey, we need something that kind of feels like this, but obviously we don't want you to go out and, take Houses of the Holy, but like make the notes a little different so that, we're not ripping them off. It's not really like that, right? Is it like we need something that feels like that? Am I
Yeah.
even close, or maybe I'm way off? That's just what I feel like.
No, I mean, you're close. It's there's composing and there's like music library. So if you're getting hired as a composer, or they're
Yeah.
saying, hey, we need this type of music for this type of scene or whatever they need it for, then you're hired to write what they want. But music library is, we're already writing it all and recording all original music, and there'll be genres, from rock to hip hop to jazz to whatever they're looking for. So the library is basically that. So you can go in, and each release is a certain genre of music. So there might be songs that are like what you're saying. Hey, we need something that sounds like Aerosmith or
Yeah, sure.
Poison or whatever. So yeah, we might have songs that are in that vein, but we're not trying to copy anybody's music.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be good.
Although I do remember when I was a kid, you'd hear like knockoff versions, because I guess it would be cheaper. Like, on like Knight Rider, they would have Walk Like an Egyptian, but it sure wasn't the Bangles singing it, and
Right.
and it was always like, oh, this is really bad. I was a kid and I'm like, this is bad. You know what I mean? I'm like,
Well,
this
there's
doesn't
a
sound
fine
right.
line there, because if they're licensing the song, and
Yeah.
they could re-record it,
Right.
maybe they want somebody different playing it, or they wanted it to be more jazzy
Oh
rather
yeah.
than rock. They would pay that license to be able to use that song. But if you're writing a song that sounds pretty much like them, and you're not,
Yeah.
you're doing it on your own, saying it's your song, then I've known guys that have been sued, and it's not a fun thing to go through. So, I try to stay away from that as much as
Oh
possible.
yeah, no, you
Yeah.
definitely want to stay away from that. And then also that's one of those things that so many artists who, don't own like the early parts of their catalog, they do those re-record albums. I know
Yes.
Twisted Sister did one, Alice Cooper did one. And I, when those first started happening, I'm like, well, why would I want this? And then you figure it out, years later, that for business
Yeah.
reasons, it's
Right.
like, yeah, you can go and talk to, Warner Brothers Records and get the song you're talking for this much money,
Right.
or you can deal with me, the
Right.
artist, and you'll get it for a lot less. So
Right.
it's interesting to think about, just how much goes into that. And, I think that a lot of music and movies and TV, maybe it just kind of sits there in the background and you don't think about it. You'll notice great music placement, great original music, but what you'll really notice is bad music that's just like, oh, this does not fit,
Right.
So
There's
it's
all
like,
kind. There's very cheesy
yeah,
library music, and then there's just bad music all in general. But yeah, you want it to sound as good as possible. And my goal in the beginning was to make it sound like, it's real live, professional, high quality recordings. And so that, I concentrate on that a lot. And I've hired a lot of other people to write for my library, and sign a lot of other people's music in my library. So it's a, yeah, it's a fine line in there sometimes. So, but funny story, you're saying that because it's something that sounds bad. I remember this one time I had like 10 songs on this release, and there was a really bad recorded one. It just horrible song, but it sounded kind of like a Pink Floyd vibe.
okay.
So I put it last on the release, and it was like, that was the first song used on that release. So you never know. Sometimes they might want something that sounds kind of weird or not too good, and other
Yeah,
times they want something
it's
really
a
good.
it's a good point, because yeah, say just hypothetically, say it's a movie where, yeah, I don't know, some high school kids are starting a band, but and we want them to be good but
Right.
not great.
Right.
So
Okay.
sometimes you're like, this is perfect, this is exactly what we want. Well,
Right.
it's very interesting to have that side of the business, and it is such an important part of everything that we do, just
There's
as
music in everything.
yeah, as an aside, my wife's a television writer, and
Oh,
she
really?
was fortunate enough to write for the show for Netflix, Orange is the New Black. And
Nice.
when she wrote one of her episodes, she had in there a Bruce Springsteen song. And I'm like, okay, good luck. That's literally never going to happen. And
Right.
it's true at that point, but this is before he sold his catalog. It didn't happen very often, but for whatever reason, it got to his desk at the right time. And she actually got the song. And then I'm like, all right, I guess I don't know what I'm talking about, you know? But that was a show that had some money for a Bruce Springsteen song.
Right. Right.
It's a little different. The Sopranos can put Journey in the final episode. Not every show can do that.
Yeah. You also got to think that what show it is, because if it's a show that's going to create a lot of royalties, you
Oh
might give
yeah.
them a cheaper license because you're going to make money on the backside. I know that was a popular show, so maybe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And and I know that during his contentious, long drawn out exit from NBC, Conan O'Brien would have his house band play Led Zeppelin music on every episode because it's very expensive and they don't like to license it. So, just little tricks like that. I don't know. I'm always interested in that side of things. It is a part of the business that not everybody thinks about, but like
No.
I said, if the song is not a good song choice, that's when you notice it. But I do want to circle back on Dogbone though. Sorry, I just am fascinated by that stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah. Me too.
Speed Kills, great song. I listened to it a bunch this morning as
Oh,
I was
thank
putting
you.
together my notes for you, and in no way does it sound like it, but because it has it at the very end, it's very reminiscent of a song I grew up loving, Detroit Rock City by Kiss, because there's the car crash at the end. So talk a little bit about sort of, and for our visual audience, I played the lyric video so you can kind of see the car driving. It's very hard, Bryan, to deal with, even though I'm talking to you about your song, if I had played it during the video, I could have gotten like a copyright thing against it. So it's like it's never worth it, in all honesty, to play a song, because it's like, oh well, how did that happen? So
Right.
like you could even say like, no, it's fine, you can play my song. And somehow someone somewhere will be like, well, this is a copywritten
Right.
song. So now you have a strike on your channel.
Right.
Anyway, so people got to see but not hear the sort of the car going down the road. So kind of talk about this idea that speed, I guess, quite literally kills.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Kiss because that's my favorite Kiss song, Detroit Rock
Yeah.
City. I, I mean that's and they always open with that song, which
Yeah.
was always as long as I'm there for the first song. And
Yeah, that's true. You can't be in the beer line. You can't go to the merch table. You do have to be there. Yeah, because they always play Rock and Roll by Led Zeppelin before they take the stage. And so for years, they always have Detroit Rock City. And
I love it.
I still want to talk to you about your song, but this kind of came up recently because I was talking to a friend of mine who was at the final two Kiss shows, and one of my favorite recordings of Kiss. It's not an album, but it was the MTV special Animalized Live on Censor from 1984. And that it's like kind of the first time that people really see, I think, Eric Carr on a big scale. And he plays those songs so fast that version of Detroit Rock City, I think it's like a minute and a half, because it's like it just goes so fast. And it's like, that's what I love about Eric Carr. And it's always a great way to start a show. But it's like, when we talk about speed, I mean, the speed with which Eric Carr's, my old boss used to say about drummers sometimes, is he's hitting those drums like he owes them money, or like they owe him money. I even fucked up the joke. He's hitting the drums like they owe him money, But so anyway, Detroit Rock City has that kind of energy. And again, not that your song was at all reminiscent of it, but I kind of get that feel because of the topic and then the car crash at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I took it from that song, but
No,
it
no,
just
yeah, yeah.
made sense to me how to end the song. It was like, how am I going to end the song? And just to visualize that last little outro there it's a big car crash because speed kills. But when I came up with the line speed kills, I was thinking it could be more than one thing. you could be talking about drugs, but
Yeah.
I chose the car. Kind of made sense, but yeah, I just felt it and put it in there, and it worked.
Yeah, no, it's a nice touch because I mean, so the song still great without it, but it just sort of like it's a nice little exclamation point
Well, it's
on
funny
the
because
end.
I never really thought of that, but you're not the first person that's commented on that.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, how'd you like the song? They go, oh, the car crash at the end's so cool. I'm like, well, what
yeah,
about the song?
yeah. No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. The song's great, but
No,
at
that's
least
funny. I'm glad I put it in there. I mean,
yeah.
it definitely you're waiting. You'll listen to the whole song. Hopefully,
Yeah, that's
get
right.
to the end.
Hey, it will tell you if whether or not somebody listened to it. You're like, why
Right.
am I
Or
talking about the car crash? Did they even listen to the song? It's one of those. So all right, so we've got this song. We've got Speed Kills on Live the Rock Volume 1. What is you mentioned that there's already another song. So talk about what's
yes.
coming up in 2024 for Dogbone.
Well, I'm now putting the final touches on the next single, and it should be out, as I say, in the end of January, beginning of February next year, along with the video. Also putting together kind of a hybrid. It's lyric video with us in the studio and recording and stuff. So it's a great song. I hope everybody likes the next one too. And I got another one in the can. Probably a couple months after that'll be out. So looking to just release 2 more singles and hopefully put together an EP. That's what I'm looking at, and would love to get out and do some shows. We're not even to that point yet,
Right.
but trying to just get out there and get us heard, and we'll see what happens for 2024. But and to go back to the beginning, I mean, Keel isn't officially broke up, or we're still together. Uh,
I can't imagine how Ron would have the time because every
right.
time I'm talking, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to people that he's working with, and somebody that's all this RFK media.
Yes.
At a certain point, it's like, when is their time? So that's good to know. I misunderstood that, but
Yeah.
that's great to know that that Keel is still out there,
Yeah.
and
I don't know how Ron does it. He's so busy. He's got
yeah,
so many things going on, and with all of us too, we all have other things going on. So it is tough, but we haven't officially like broke up. So,
right,
hopefully we do something the next year or two, because it
yeah.
is our 40th anniversary next year.
Oh, just
And then 2025 will be the 40th year of the Ride to Rock. So,
yeah, see, that's when you gotta that's when subtle hints have to be left for promoters and festivals and things, and like anytime you got an anniversary,
yes.
it's always good. So you can so Dogbone can be found on YouTube, Dogbone the band. There's not just Speed Kills, there's a few other songs on there.
Yeah,
Demise of
those are
an
some
Angel.
old
Yeah.
songs from the original singer, and also an instrumental on there that I did. It's just me and Dwayne, and
And
thought I'd put
and
that
a
up
little
there.
bit of We Three Kings also I see
Yes,
on there.
that was something I did for my music library with Bob Reynolds, the singer of
Oh,
Dogbone,
cool.
and so that's why I put it on there, because it's both of us. But
Yeah, hey,
yeah, it's definitely part of the library.
it's half the band right there, so you
Exactly.
get to put it out there. And I guess it's the same thing on Facebook, Dogbone the band. Where else? Make sure that I check off all the boxes, Brian. Where else can
Yeah,
people
Dogbone the
find you?
band on Facebook, Instagram, same thing. And you can find me Bryan Jay on Facebook, Bryan Jay Guitar on Facebook and Instagram. So, and we also
Yeah.
have a website, dogbonetheband.com. So you can go there. But go to our YouTube page, you know, subscribe to our page, and I'm gonna be putting up a lot more videos very soon here. And you can follow what we're doing from there, and the website, all social media, whatever. They're all
Right.
connected pretty much. So
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, at this point, you have a band name that's easy to remember, Dogbone. It's like they
yes.
can forget whether it's Dogbone the band or the Dogbone. They're gonna probably just go to Google, type in Dogbone. I mean,
Yeah, it's funny that when we came up with that name, we were actually looking at a box of dog bones. It was because we couldn't think of a name. It was Eddie Size, the original singer, and I, we were trying to think of a name. And so there was no bands named Dogbone back then.
Yeah.
But now that, 30 years later, it was like, okay, there's some other bands named Dogbone, but they were like, weren't recording or anything. And there's a band called The Dogbones.
Oh,
They
yeah,
had a
the
record
dog
deal.
bones. You're like, that's
Yeah.
not the same thing. It's
But so,
interesting when you'll get, like there's bands that have to be like, British this or something UK.
right,
And like there was a British Skid Row that never made it in the US. So it didn't matter for Skid Row, except for, I guess, putting the records on the shelves in the UK.
right.
All that stuff that you don't think about because you're like, I have the greatest band name. And then you're like, somebody else has it,
Yeah. Well, I used Dogbone the band just so you don't get it confused with Dog Bones.
with other dog. Yeah, right. So you're not getting actual dog bones, the milk bones or whatever.
Well,
Well,
Tesla, they have to say Tesla the band.
Well, yeah, and not from lack of reaching out to Elon Musk over the years. They would have been happy for any kind of collaboration. And
Right.
I mean, I'm not really putting words into their mouths. I've read where they've said that. I've asked them about it, and they're like, "Hey, man, if he wants to give anybody a free car or anything like that." But yeah, and of course, like that, that band's been around. Well, not 40 years, but almost 40 years. So it's like long before there was a car. But then you have to like,
Right.
oh, well, we were here first, but now we have to differentiate ourselves from the other thing. So.
And then there's that Nicolo guy.
Like, well, yeah, his problem was he didn't have good PR. I've talked to the guys in Tesla; they have good PR, but the actual inventor didn't have good PR. And I guess if you listen to Tesla's music, you understand that Thomas Edison basically robbed him blind. So, but that's not your problem. Your problem is making sure people know about Dogbone. And again,
Absolutely.
Speed Kills is out there. And I enjoyed chatting with you, Bryan, and I look forward to hearing some of the new music when it comes out in the new year.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on here, and have a Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
I will do that. You do the same. And again, for our audio audience, check out a little bit of Speed Kills. And thanks again, Bryan Jay.